be a catalyst for that endeavor. So what we did is for the first time, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, if you're coming from that region, you know they don't always get along as states or regional partners. But they came together to create something called talentcapital.ai, which is based on built within technology. It's a front door for all displaced workers, recent college graduates, folks that are shifting careers later in their lives. And it's a front door that gives them a one-stop shop to come in, to have conversations with a squad of over 20 agents and get to understand, using AI, what really should they be doing with their career, right? No longer are we talking about just chatbots or job boards or kind of phase one versions of artificial intelligence. We're going deeper through the use of agents, and through talentcapital.ai, it's giving a large scale, just to give you a number, within the first 24 hours, over 60,000 residents from across the region interacted with the agents. And just in a matter of about 2 weeks, close to 84,000 matches have taken place. So really trying to understand as a society, how can we not only just use artificial intelligence within our companies, within our own teams, within our own families, our own lives, but how do we deploy artificial intelligence in an accessible and a safe way at scale across regions, across governments, across society? And that's just a good example of that in our nation's capital. To the folks that are coming to discuss.
Great success.
Yeah, so just like Philip and Jeannie mentioned, I think every organization has the opportunity to leverage AI for their employees internally as well as externally with your clients or customers. And I think in the first example here, I'll focus on the former. And as Jim mentioned, EY has a unique challenge in that we have 400,000 employees globally. And of those 400,000 employees, the majority of them are client-facing professionals across our assurance, our tax, our consulting, as well as our strategy businesses that have very different personas. And there's not only an expectation by our clients that we are going to be using AI in the way we deliver our services, but there's an expectation by these 400,000 employees that there's going to be tools in their hands that they can use. And as we've been going through this over the past 4 to 5 years, we've invested over $1 billion in artificial intelligence and learned a lot about adoption of AI by a large scale population of resources. And there's some really interesting things that we've learned as we've been putting these tools into the hands of these employees. One is that there is a lot of excitement and in fact expectation by our more junior folks, and by junior I mean 0 to 10 years of working experience. There's also a lot of excitement and expectation at the most senior levels of our organization. But interestingly enough, our, I'll call it middle layer of resources, talking like 10 to 20 years of experience, are a little bit more reticent to adopt very, very frequently. In fact, have some resistance on accepting work that has leveraged AI without a very significant level of validation, verification, and scrutiny on it, because they just don't trust that the way that we've been doing our work, or they've been doing their work for 10 or 20 years, can be advanced so quickly. And it's not that they don't believe in the tools, it's the trusted and the trust and verify type of persona that it holds them back from truly embracing and adopting. Something else that we've learned is that when you put tools into the hands of employees, AI tools, whether it's a Copilot or a GPT or Claude or any other type of AI technology, if you put tools into the hands of employees and say, look at your process, look at the way that you do your work today, and find ways to use these tools to do your work more effectively and more productively, you get very minimal gain. It actually is an hour, 2 hours, maybe at most 5 hours of productivity gains that you're going to get into a week. However, if you change it to persona-based adoption, where employees are told, these are the types of tasks and responsibilities you have today, and this is how AI can change the way that you are doing your work, the gains become far more measurable and far more demonstrative. There's a lot of other things that we've learned along the way, including what we've learned in some external studies that we've done. One of the most interesting statistics that we saw from an external survey we did was in a workforce and employee-related AI study that said that 63% of people that were surveyed said they do not want to manage an AI system. They do not want to mention an agentic, an AI agent. And I think that that is representative of some of the things that we've been seeing as we've been adopting it with our employees, that there is a little bit of a resistance and a fear on what it means to not just be managing people, but to also be managing AI systems.
So,
if you weren't awake, you are now.
So we're just going to open it up for questions, comments on the first round of case studies. Does anybody want to jump in tag on what somebody else has said?
I'd love to tag on something Jill mentioned very, very quickly. You went through it really fast, but it's something that I think is a really important, maybe more technical thing to focus on, which is that in the past 3 to 4 years, we've gotten really, really excited about generative AI and about agentic AI, but in our experience, somewhere greater than 70 or 80% of the value being generated in enterprises from AI today is in classic AI. And I think that when we talk about AI today, we immediately go to generative, right? Or maybe we immediately go to agentic, but AI is a full toolbox. And if you are not looking at those more classic AI applications, whether it's computer vision or it's anomaly detection or it's recommender systems or whatever, you're losing the boat on a huge trough of value.
I love the water pun too, losing the boat. That was nice. That was really nice. And I do think, if I were to play that back to some of the things that we talked about in all of the organizations we're in, even just the basic understanding of when an employee says, what is AI? How can I use AI? I do think there's some education and some grounding that comes along with the fact that it's not just ChatGPT. Those things are not synonymous, which I think many of the folks here in this room understand, but when we're talking about being able to scale these solutions and helping everybody understand, that's really where we even need to start. Like, what do we mean by AI? What are the different forms and how can they really unlock, value?
There are more than 100,000 AI apps for business right now, and everybody, when you say AI, they think ChatGPT, but that is so 2022. So, not that I love ChatGPT, I'm on it 25 times a day, but like in the video that is on my QR code, I start off, imagine a 16:9 slide with 1/3 panel. I speak in English saying, we're seeing productivity use cases with more than 10,000x increases in productivity. That's amazing. And then I advance it in the middle panel, I'm speaking Chinese. And the next panel, German. And then I'll do Hindi and Spanish and French. But the first time I did this, a woman came up and she said, she was Chinese, she said, your Mandarin was perfect. And I said, shi, which is thank you, the only word I know in Mandarin. So people actually think it's me speaking. So the use cases for AI are really surprising, far beyond chat. So that's to your point about classic AI, like neural networks reducing fraud by more than 90% for credit cards.
I also would add, because I think that's really interesting, and I think to your point about sort of the classic AI and the different use cases, the other thing that's really important is the foundation that it's built on and the sort of data that goes into it. And I think, yes, generative AI, yes, agentic AI all require, kind of important, clean, organized data sets. to be able to give accurate results and to be able to give trusted results. And I think that's an area where, if we think about the evolving sort of workforce and the evolving needs, yes, we need people to build products and innovate and build really cool things, but we're finding that we also just need a lot of people and tools to make sure that the data that's feeding them is good, because it's, I mean, you've said it for eons, garbage in, garbage out. And I think that still holds true, that, if we're not building these systems on robust, trusted, clean data sets, it's not going to matter how cool the tool is. It's not going to matter how much time it seems to save, because it really won't do the things we need.
Jamie, I think like everybody should walk away with that statement, like as the takeaway from it. The two biggest challenges, or the biggest hurdles in gaining value from AI, are change management and adoption by people and your data. And my team and my clients have probably got sick of hearing me say, in my estimate, for every dollar you spend on AI, you're going to spend $20 on data. And if you're not, don't ever think you're going to have good AI. 100%.
So we're going to jump into our second case study. Who wants to start us off? Philip.
Go reverse order this time. So again, when we were kind of prepping for this panel, I was trying to find some interesting use cases that would kind of resonate with folks in this audience, and let me throw this one out there for y'all. I think when we think about AI, when we think about its use cases, I think it's very important for us to think about the tertiary or the tangential implications or value propositions beyond just the technology itself, in terms of how does it change how we approach, in this case, work. But it could be anything. It could be how we approach relationships, how we approach kind of interdepartmental kind of engagements. But in this case, I wanted to use an example, and I mentioned United Airlines a little bit at the top of my remarks, because I think they're a good example of how AI could really rise to the moment here in terms of how we think about work as a country and as a society, and really be a catalyst for the changing need for how we approach kind of upskilling, reskilling here in the United States in particular. So the kind of example I want to use is United Airlines, headquartered in Chicago. We got a couple of Illinois, Chicago folks on the panel here today. Is very, very kind of innovative. If you don't really understand their tech stack, if you haven't used their app, I use it all the time, absolutely love it. They are immensely technical in terms of the makeup of their corporation. And they have a really large technology team based in their headquarters in Chicago. And they were thinking about how do we recruit talent in a different way. And in particular in the city of Chicago, they were looking at populations that have traditionally not been served by technology leaders, because those populations don't have a 2-year or 4-year degree, because they don't have experience in tech. And they decided that it was an elegant solution to combine AI with a model that is pretty darn old at this point, which is apprenticeships. So United Airlines said, we are going to create a program called Innovate, and we are going to go after individuals here in Chicago that maybe don't have a background in technology, but by leveraging a platform based in AI and combining that with a model that is focused on the job training, focused on the job learning, let's see what the results will be. So they ran their first cohort, and at the end of it, 90-something+% of those individuals that went through that apprenticeship, because of that combination of artificial intelligence and new models of training individuals within our organizations, graduated and became full-time employees. And I think that the lesson in that for me is we become a little bit myopic when we look at AI. We look at what is the immediate value proposition? What is it going to empower me to do? What's the immediate ROI here? And we forget to look at kind of what is alongside these platforms that can be optimized as well or tweaked. What are the changes in process, the changes in maybe an old way of thinking about how we do things, that AI can help enable a new kind of mindset. And I think by United saying, hey, we have this problem and we have this kind of two-sided opportunity of leveraging AI and leveraging a model for upskilling and retaining talent, I think is a good use case for all of us. And it doesn't have to be just workforce, but thinking about AI in terms of, not just the application, but what are the systems in which that application is fitting.
Jamie?
Sure. I think it's really interesting as you talk about that, kind of thinking about applying sort of a new way of thinking to existing process. And I think, Tracy, to your point of you kind of need to rebuild the process from the ground up. And I think one of the things that we have found, and I'll get into, I'm not going to go too wonky into like the advertising and media buying business because it's a lot, but I think one of the things that we've done and one of the products that we've built is focused less on efficiency, which is where I think we see a lot of AI focus on, and more on effectiveness and doing our job better and better outcomes for clients. So historically, when you've bought media, you go through a whole process, a research and insights and intelligence process to figure out who your target audience is. And everyone, I'm sure, has this idea of, I sell a product, I know who my audience is. And you can go down into the most granular level of detail of exactly who is my target audience, who's going to convert and be have the highest lifetime value, and all of these elements. And you build this amazing persona, this really robust, rich persona, and then you want to go buy advertising against that, and you end up buying women 18 to 45. And that is broken. It doesn't it's sort of like, why have we built this amazing persona? Why have we built this targeted creative? Why have we built it when we're just going to buy women 18 to 45? And so one of the things that we've done and leveraged AI as a tool, and not generative AI and not agentic AI, but machine learning and LLMs to augment those intelligence insights into attributes in the buying platforms, into those CTV, those digital, those linear TV, those buying platforms, where you can actually take the audience you want to reach and actually find them and buy against them. That's something that we've kind of changed the process to be more efficient, to drive better outcomes. We've seen exponentially better results in terms of ROI, in terms of our return on ad spend, in terms of our basket size and cart size and things like that for clients. It's about driving better effectiveness and changing the process and using AI in a different way. And now it's enabling, it makes sure that our intelligence teams don't feel like the work they're doing is for naught when, all of a sudden you go over here and they've sort of like, well, what happened to all that amazing work? Now it's truly kind of end to end, and that fidelity of that information and those audiences is really pulled through. And that for us has been game changing in terms of not just the way we do our work, but the way we deliver results for clients, the way that we're, kind of driving those business outcomes.
I'll build on a case here. So I totally agree with the panel that part of what we have to do to deliver the future of work is really focus on mindsets, employee mindsets and the like. And a little bit of context is, so I was a math major. For those of you that know what actuaries are, I'm a pension actuary. I'm a fellow for the Society of Actuaries. And here I sit in front of you as an HR leader, and I think it is awesome because I want to treat humans like they're rational. Like if we do A plus B, then out will be C. And by definition, humans are completely irrational. And I think being an HR leader is the most fun job that there is. And I think it is so relevant right now when we think about deploying these skills to the future of work. What we've done at Brunswick is we started with mindsets, kind of a bit by design, but not for the AI outcome. It was more to drive innovation throughout the organization for our new products. So we came up with this tagline called Next, Never Rest. We actually unveiled the new Brunswick brand at CES a couple of years ago. And this theory of continuous improvement, and you heard really good examples from the panel about how they drive their behaviors and values in their organizations to get humans to do things. So you can only come to the Paris leadership meeting if you take your AI course. That kind of drives rational people to do rational things because they want to go to Paris. Or ways in which you support managers at a consulting company to be able to scale. What we did then at Brunswick is we started using this continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma for those of you that are manufacturers, design thinking in terms of new product, and then pointed it to the future of work as it relates to AI. We also put in some standard workflows, business system of sorts. Those of you that are familiar with Danaher, we're doing something similar at Brunswick, a Brunswick business system. And it's been really awesome to watch our people get excited about this next never rest mindset with a technology tool through a leadership lens to be able to deliver a use case for AI. And my favorite one that we talked about earlier was, at least in the US, tariffs have been a big focus of conversation. We're a global business, and you could not imagine the tens of thousands, if not 50,000, 100,000 amount of parts that go into our products. We make 18 brands of boats with all these engines, little SKUs, cleats, ladders, you name it. And our tariff team, or our supply chain buyer team said, this feels like repeatable work. Hey, I have an idea. There might be a way for me to continuously improve this, to put an AI solution on this form of repeatable work. And not only with a generative AI tool, but all of our engineers have all of these drafts of what the products and the parts look like, whether it's coming out of CAD or whether it's going somewhere else. Why don't we scan those in, start to tell the visual identification as well as the LLM models what they're looking for, and spend a lot of our time getting the model ready. That way, when we read on Truth Social what our next iteration of tariff rates are, we can feed it back through the model. And it worked brilliantly. It was designed by the team, created by the team. People weren't nervous that AI was going to take their jobs, but it really delivered a sustainable outcome. And in my opinion, it really started with this concept of mindset. Where can you apply innovation in your day-to-day work? And is there a way that you can apply AI at a business problem? And let's work together with our managers to be able to go and figure that out.
Amazing. Tracy, rounding out this round.
Yeah, I talked earlier about kind of the internal side of EY, but I have the great privilege of spending a lot of time with our clients across a multitude of different industries and helping them to figure out how to drive value from AI. And some of what we've seen is in our clients is very similar to some of the things that we've been doing internally and the lessons learned that we've had. And there's a few big things that we've seen clients doing that is a real blocker to value. And we've read the headlines, right? Every time we open up some paper or some online publication, we see the headline, lack of value in AI or disappointing value in AI. I mean, the table's starting to turn a little bit, but the headlines have been out there. And the reality is that in a lot of cases, we've just been doing it wrong. And what I mean by that is, if you look at most business processes today, those business processes were built for a human-first approach that might leverage technology, or a human-first approach that has had technology adapted over a period of time. And what we're trying to do now is take these processes and say, how can I take this process and use AI in that process? And I say that, this is a page out of the 2010 book of RPA, right? This is what we did 15 years ago when RPA was the newest technology. We took our tried, trusted, and true, well-documented processes and said, these are the points in this process that I can use RPA. And we're trying to do the same thing today with artificial intelligence, but the game has changed. And if you take the same approach that we took 15 years ago, you're going to get the same results. You're going to get a process that has been slightly adapted and become slightly more productive. But if you forget the process, start with where you're beginning, the inputs you have, and the outcome or the expectation that you're trying to derive, and rewrite that process from scratch with an AI-first approach, the answer that you get to is very, very different. And the ROI return on it is demonstratively different. And I have a very quick example on something that EY did. We provide services to our clients in hundreds of different ways, hundreds of different services. But one thing that we do is something we call third-party risk management, right? So we help our clients determine third-party risk management. And we wanted to use AI to make this process better for our clients. And so we took that wrong approach at first. We took this tried and true methodology that has been working for decades, and we said, how can we change it with AI? And we took a case-by-case basis, so a case might take 46 hours, and we said, how can we do it with AI? And we got it down to 32 hours. And we looked at it and we said, that's great. We've taken 12 hours out of this process, but it just didn't feel groundbreaking. And so we wiped the slate clean, and we took a combination of people that have never done third-party risk management before, software engineers, and teamed them with experts, and we said, forget the way that you do it today. This is where you start, this is the outcome you have to get to. And they got down to 15 minutes. Now, when the experts went back to review it, they realized there were points of validation missing, there were checks, human checks that had to be done, there were some things that just absolutely had to be done by a human, and so when we added it all back up together, it came out to about 6 hours. But still, we went from 46 down to 6 versus 46 down to 34 or 32, whatever it was. And that's the difference the mindset shift can be if you try to reinvent versus just try to augment.
That was a great case study. I just want to throw in a couple things from this second round. One, I go to Davos every year, and in January of 25, the World Economic Forum's jobs report said that the average global worker's skill set, 39% of it won't be valid or relevant by 2030. So this is to Philip's point. So we need, number one, an industrial scale training and development, learning and education focus. The second thing is that, now mind you, this is so old, it's like 12 months old, but 63% of Americans fear the use of AI, or fear AI. And if you fear it, you're never going to use it, and you're not going to get the culture change we've been talking about. So when people actually embrace AI and they see how powerful it is and fun, you can change those attitudes around. So engaging people, training, and I believe every single person in the organization needs to be trained in AI. So we're down to our last 2 minutes and 45 seconds. We're not going to have our comment round, but we're going to go directly into our final comments, or like comment on others' case studies. Although if in your final closing remarks you want to comment on something, knock yourself out. So, Jamie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think as we've had this conversation here on stage today and a couple, previous conversations, I think for me, one of the key takeaways is that change is hard. And I think we all know that, as humans, it is just difficult for us to change behaviors, for us to change the ways that we work. And we need to have multiple approaches to doing that. We need to have different ways of incentivizing and different ways of engaging different types of people, different roles. And I would say for me also, and it's not just AI in general, anything that we expect to change in the next couple months, it's going to take 10 times longer than that. It's going to take 10 times longer than you think to change an organization, because that's human behavior just doesn't naturally lend itself to that. So I think if we think about skepticism in AI, change is hard, and that's my big piece, is like we all need to be cognizant of that and think about that as we engage and try and change our workforces and our organizations.
Jill, in 20 seconds, your final comment.
Ooh, I love the challenge. I would just say focus on the head, the hands, and the heart. Make sure that you've got the right mindsets, point AI, real business problems, and make sure that you're not forgetting the human aspect that change is scary, and help support your managers and your leaders of people be able to have those conversations.
Fantastic. I love that. The head, the hand, the heart. Philip, 20
I don't
seconds.
have a trio. I don't have a trio like that. But I'm going to say the following. I'm going to use my time to thank the panelists up here with me, because we've spent a lot of time talking outside of the panel itself, and have learned an immense amount from each other. And I think that's the message I have for everybody that's in the conference room today and going out into CES this week is, there's a lot of applications for AI. And if I were to leave you with one thing is, don't lose the human centricity in the application for whatever you're developing, whatever company you're working for, whether it's 400,000 people or 30 people. Don't lose that human centricity and find the application that you're either passionate about, has a good ROI for your company, or what have you. But there's an immense amount of opportunity here over the next couple of days to learn, to grow, to evolve your own understanding of AI, your own application within your organization. So don't waste it.
Love it, Philip. And if we can have the QR code slide up, rounding out our panel, final 20-second insight. Tracy, your summation.
I'll leave you with, if you want your employees to be excited about using AI, and you want to gain value out of it, reimagine, don't adapt, and put the employees at the center of that reimagination.
If you can all join me in thanking this most amazing panel launching